Good morning, everyone. We're so happy you could join us this morning. We're going to give it just a couple of minutes for people to join in on the webinar. All right, I see people are coming in. Okay, we'll just give it a few more seconds and then we'll get started. All right. Well, good morning all, and thank you for joining us today for AIANTA's webinar series. Today's webinar is in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service for the Native Act Request for Proposals FY 2024. So a little bit about AIANTA. For more than 25 years, the American Indian Alaska Native Tourism Association has served as the only national organization dedicated to advancing cultural heritage tourism in Native nations and communities across the United States. Established by tribes for tribes to address inequities in the tourism system, AIANTA is a 501c3 national nonprofit governed by an all-Native board of directors and serves as a united voice for the $15.7 billion Native hospitality sector. AIANTA's successful legislative work led to the industry-changing Native American Tourism and Improving Visitor Experience Act, or NATIVE Act, funding in 2018 as Indigenous tourism was recognized through federal appropriations via NATIVE Act implementation. Our mission is to define, introduce, grow, and sustain American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian tourism that honors traditions and values, while helping American Indian, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian businesses become market and export ready for domestic and international markets. Tribes who are looking to start or expand their cultural tourism footprint can find resources at aianta.org, and visitors interested in learning more about Native culture can visit nativeamerica.travel. If you have any questions, please place them in the chat or the question and answers, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. So, our first presenter this morning is Toby Bloom. Toby is the Forest Service National Program Manager for Tourism and Interpretation. Her portfolio includes strengthening recreation economies in forest gateway communities, working with tribes to promote authentic interpretation and responsible visitation to Native heritage sites, innovative public lands and health partnerships, the National Forest Explorer mobile app, and working with interpretive associations to improve visitor experience on the national forests. Toby believes in nature as a key aspect of a healthy life and was the first Forest Service employee to become a certified nature and forest therapy guide in January 2019. As a program specialist for Forest Service international programs, and before joining Forest Service, she worked with local communities to develop ecotourism projects in Latin America and the Caribbean. Toby started her career in tourism and interpretation as a tour guide through the US, Canada, and Mexico. Her master's degree is in sustainable international development with a focus on ecotourism from Brandeis University. I know I probably said that wrong, Toby, but you can correct me.
Close enough.
Close enough. Great. And we also have some other speakers with us this morning. And so I'm very pleased to introduce April Counselor. She's a PhD and Executive Director for the Alutiiq Museum. April is an Alutiiq tribal member who grew up in Larsen Bay and Kodiak. She began work at the Alutiiq Museum as a college intern. She is one of the first people in her generation to gain fluency in Alutiiq. After college, she led the museum's education and language departments, working to preserve, document, and teach the Alutiiq language. April earned her PhD from the University of Alaska in 2010 and then developed the Alutiiq Studies program at Kodiak College as an assistant professor. She returned to the museum as executive director in 2015. Welcome, April. And also with us today is Luke Strong-Svetich. Luke serves as the Tribal Planning Director for the Jamestown Squalum Tribe. Luke is a staff member for the tribe and not a Jamestown tribal citizen or member of any other tribe. Luke helps oversee the tribe's land use planning strategies, transportation program, Office of Tribal Historic Preservation, and library programming. Luke leads the tribe's planning efforts to facilitate future development on tribal lands, and he works hard to maintain relations with federal, state, and local agencies and organizations to protect and advance the tribe's interests. Luke recently helped with the Jamestown Squalum Tribal Library Expansion Project, which included new cultural exhibit space, and he's excited to be helping out with more interpretive projects, like the outdoor exhibits interpreting interconnections between Squalum cultural traditions and Olympic National Forest Dungeness Watershed Project that received support from AIANTA. Luke lives in Port Angeles, Washington, and enjoys spending time outdoors in the Olympic Mountains and on the Pacific Northwest coast.
Sherry, please advance the slides. Oh, there you go.
I know. There's April. There's Luke. And here is Powell. Powell is the land stewardship manager for the Jamestown Squalum tribe, and he monitors and improves conservation properties for habitat and recreational opportunities. In his position, he helps to build stewardship ethics through education and relationship building. Previously, he served as the executive director of the Dungeness River Nature Center, or DRNC, for over a decade, and as the education coordinator before that. The DRNC is a partnership venture including the Jamestown Squalum tribe, who owns the land and building that the DRNC operates out of. As an employee, he developed, delivered, and managed environmental and cultural educational programming for all ages while managing a park and a thriving nonprofit organization. So please welcome all of our presenters this morning, and we will go in order of our presenters. And I'm going to turn this over to Toby now.
Great. Thank you, Sherry. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the Forest Service works with our tribal partners. All of our national forests and grasslands are essentially tribal lands, and many of the lands that Forest Service manages border present-day tribal communities and lands. And most of the sites that we manage, a lot of them have Indian ancestral sites on them. So we collaborate with tribal governments, Indian traditionalists and spiritual experts, tribal members, and tribal historic preservation officers on the management of these lands. We have a database called the Infra database, and that tracks information on all of the known cultural resources that we manage. Currently, the database contains information on over 410,000 known sites. This is more than any other public land agency, and the number increases every day as more sites are found. Forest Service engages in regular consultation with tribes on how to manage visitation to these sites, and some of the sites are kept confidential to ensure that non-tribal visitation is kept at an absolute minimum. We also engage with tribes on co-management of several visitor centers. Just last week, we had an MOU signing ceremony at the Pactola Visitor Center in the Black Hills in South Dakota. Forest Service will be co-managing that visitor center with 6 tribes that are in the area as well. The Forest Service Recreation Department has an MOU with AIANTA. We also have this partnership agreement where we can pass the Native Act funds that are congressionally allocated to us through AIANTA so that we have more flexibility so that tribes can receive these funds directly. We also have several already existing joint Forest Service tribal tourism and interpretation projects at places like Chimney Rock National Monument, the Colville National Forest, Comanche National Grasslands, and several others. And we're going to hear from a couple of our awardees today that were also fortunate recipients of the Native Act grants in previous years. So we'll look forward to that. We are in a unique time right now regarding funding and political will. So we really want to work with you all to strike while the iron is hot, work together in an ongoing way to identify potential opportunities and partners on the ground that can spur sustainable growth and economic returns through your local tourism and recreation economies. Next slide, please. Sherry, I think this one's you.
This is me, yes. So in 2016, the Native Act became Public Law 114-221. In 2018, AIANTA entered into a memorandum of understanding with the Departments of Interior and Department of Commerce to formalize AIANTA's role pursuant to Section 4D of the Native Act, specific to the identification and delivery of technical assistance and training related to travel and tourism. In 2022, AIANTA entered into an agreement with the U.S. Forest Service to distribute grants to support the implementation of the Native Act with the U.S. Forest Service. The purpose of the Native Act is to enhance and integrate Native American tourism, A, to empower Native American communities, and B, to advance the national travel and tourism strategy. To increase coordination and collaboration between federal tourism assets, to support Native American tourism, and bolster recreational travel and tourism. To expand heritage and cultural tourism opportunities in the United States, to spur economic development, create jobs, and increase tourism revenues. Also, to enhance and improve self-determination and self-governance capabilities in the Native American community and to promote greater self-sufficiency. To encourage Indian tribes, tribal organizations, and Native Hawaiian organizations to engage more fully in Native American tourism activities to increase visitation to rural and remote areas in the United States that are too difficult to access or are unknown to domestic travelers and international tourists. To provide grants, loans, and technical assistance to Indian tribes, tribal organizations, and Native Hawaiian organizations that will spur important infrastructure development, increase tourism capacity, and elevate living standards in Native American communities. And to support the development of technologically innovative projects that will incorporate recreational travel and tourism information and data from federal assets to improve the visitor experience. So today, in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service, we're going to review the RFP issued with the Native Act projects and initiatives on or adjacent to U.S. Forest Service managed lands. The RFP is available on our website at www.ianta.org. And this webinar is being recorded and will also be available on our website. We're asking that you keep your questions come up during the presentation, and we'll allow some time at the very end for some questions and answers. So this grant opportunity allows for a wide variety of projects, and you will have up to 2 years to complete the project if awarded. Your reporting requirements, depending on the length of the project, are to be submitted semi-annually or every 6 months. And then there's an annual report or your final report. So as you can see here, the grant range is $25,000 to $250,000. As I mentioned before, up to 2 years to complete the project, and all projects must be completed by November 30, 2026. And Toby's going to go through the grant eligibility requirements, and then we get to hear from some of the grant awardees and the amazing projects that they're working on. So back over to you, Toby.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about eligibility. The groups that are eligible for these award grants, these funds. Oh, sorry, I skipped back down to my other slide. Let me run down. Indian tribes and tribal organizations. And when we use those terms, we are talking about the meaning that's given in the terms of Section 4 of the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act. And also Native nonprofits. And any of these organizations that border or have historic ties to U.S. Forest Service managed lands are eligible for these funds. The funds must be used for cultural tourism, interpretation, and or recreation initiatives. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, first criteria. Native Act grant proposals will be reviewed based on 5 criteria, 4 of which will be reviewed based on a point scale, with the last one being included for consideration based on location, so that we have an equitable distribution of the funds across all of the Forest Service regions. So the first criteria is, does the program or project spur important infrastructure development and or increase technical capacity? We're looking for tribally led initiatives with the potential to grow and expand impact over time, or initiatives that are more mature and ready to advance to the next stage of implementation. And if the criteria for this particular area are met, they can receive a maximum of 10 points. Next slide. Okay, the second criteria is the program or project proposal developing a clear case for implementation. We are looking for a clear understanding of the project and program timeline, what the project and program intends to achieve, how it will be achieved, reflected in both the narrative and the project budget, and the specific tribes engaged in and benefiting from the project, along with a reasonable estimate of the number of people that will be positively impacted, and that can include visitors as well. Strong proposals will provide and demonstrate research and estimate to support the project narrative and the project budget. We want to know that the numbers and the activities that you're putting in those proposals have been researched, and that you know that you're able to accomplish them, and that the amount of money that you've requested will provide what you need in order to complete the project. So if this criteria is met, it can receive a maximum of 10 points. Next slide, please. Okay, criteria number 3, is the project or program broadly supported? We're looking for projects and programs that are tribally driven with broad support for implementation. To be considered, the proposal must include the following. First, evidence of tribal support, including a document that reflects approval for the project by the tribal council or the tribal government. And that is worth up to 3 points. Number 2, a letter of cooperation from the local Forest Service unit, and that is also mandatory. Both of these are mandatory, and that's worth up to 2 points. And then the final criteria, the final one for this criteria, is letters of support or cooperation from other organizations that will collaborate or be impacted by the project, and these are optional and worth up to 2 points. So with all of those together, if the criteria is met, it can receive a maximum of 7 points. Next, the fourth area criteria. Does the organization have the capacity to implement the proposal? We're looking for proposals that demonstrate the ability and capacity to implement through staff expertise and overall capacity. And this can include partners. The maximum allowable for indirect expenses for proposal budgets is 15% of the total budget request. And so if this criteria is met, it can receive a maximum of 5 points. All right, next slide. This fifth criteria is not awarded any points, but again, we do this as a way to ensure equity across our different Forest Service regions. So project location will be considered to ensure that there's an equitable distribution of potential projects across Forest Service regions. Last year, we did not receive any proposals from the following Forest Service regions: Rocky Mountain region, which is region 2, the Southwestern region, which is region 3, or Arizona and New Mexico, and the Intermountain region, which is region 4. And so we're really strongly encouraging folks from those areas to please apply. We'd really love to get some proposals from that particular area of the country. Everyone is obviously encouraged to apply, and all of the proposals will be reviewed and scored equitably. But again, we really want to see proposals, especially from those regions where we didn't have any last year. So let's go into our first poll question. What is the location of your proposed project? And you should be able to answer the poll. There we go. Your poll question just popped up. And if you want to check one of those boxes, we will see where everybody is calling in from. All right. Should we pop the answers up and see what we got? All right. It looks like we have 3% from the Central Plains area. We have 3% from the Great Basin, 3% from the Midwest, 7% from the Northeastern area of the United States, 20% from the Northwest, 7% from Oklahoma, 7% from the Pacific Northwest, 23% from the Rocky Mountain region. That's exciting. Great. 3% from Southeast Alaska, and 10% from the Southeastern United States, and 13% from the Southwest. So that is a really great distribution, and we appreciate everybody answering that question. We really hope to see your proposals. So thank you very much. I'm passing back to Sherry, I believe.
Thank you, Toby. Yeah, it's really great to see that there's potential applicants from all across the country today.
Indeed. Yep.
All right. So let me go to the next slide here. All right, the grant proposal itself. So to prepare your proposal, please see the prompts and questions and required attachments on AIANTA's website. And under proposal information. So this is a screenshot of the page on our website. So you can go there and then answer all of those questions there. And then really think about, what Toby was mentioning earlier, getting those required letters and getting some letters from your partners as well. Okay. Next slide. So this is our second poll, and we want to know, do you plan to submit a proposal in response to the RFP? So let me... Okay. Can you see that poll?
No, it didn't come up.
It didn't come up.
I've got it. The poll didn't come up. The question came up on the slide, but just not the poll.
It should come up now.
There it is. We got it.
All right. So let us know, do you plan to submit a proposal in this round? I'm seeing a lot of unsures. Let's see here. Let's share these results. So I have 20% that say yes, 10% say no, and 70% unsure. So Toby, maybe through the question and answer, we can push them to the other side to say yes.
I hope so. Our friend Rudy Bean put a note in the chat to ask if there is a match requirement, and the answer is no. There is no match requirement for these funds. So hopefully that will push a few more of you from unsure into yes.
Okay, so just some final details before we hear from our guests. Respondents to this RFP are asked to submit their proposal via email to arichardson@ianta.org. Responses must be received no later than July 26, 2024 at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. And responses should be clearly marked with the submitting party's name in the regarding line and emailed to the contact person as listed above. Okay, at this point, we're going to turn it over to our speakers. And firstly, we'll have Dr. April Counselor, who is the Executive Director for the Alutiiq Museum in Kodiak, Alaska. Welcome, April. Oh, you're on mute, April.
Thank you for pointing that out. And thank you for the invite to present today about our exciting project that is funded under this grant program. The project is called Canuck or Fire Gallery, and it's about living and sharing our living traditions. The Alutiiq Museum, where I'm the executive director, opened in 1995, and it was a response to many decades of outside researchers coming into our community and conducting archaeology projects and cultural research projects that didn't really benefit the Native community, and the Native community did not have control over that research. So for a long time, the Native community wanted to establish our own museum and culture center so that cultural material would stay home and benefit our own people. So in 1995, when we opened, we were governed by representatives from each of the 7 Native corporations from our archipelago, as well as representing the needs of the 10 tribes of the Kodiak archipelago here in Kodiak. So we're on an island that's about the size of Connecticut. It's about an hour flight from the city of Anchorage, or you can take a 12-hour ferry ride to get to the mainland. So it's both remote and not remote where we live. After we opened, we quickly turned from a cultural research center to a living culture center. Our mission is to preserve and share Alutiiq heritage and living culture. And we do programs like collections research, community-based archaeology, advocating to protect sacred sites, language revitalization work, cultural arts workshops, ancestor repatriations, publications, and other types of cultural work, both for our own Native community, but also to visitors to our region to learn about our community. So in the project that we are working on under this funding, we are in the middle of a huge renovation project for our museum. We can move to the next slide, please. For probably over 15 years, we have known that our original museum footprint was too small. We were a tenant in our facility, occupying the first floor of the building that you can see in the photo. But we didn't own the facility, and we were wanting to expand based on community input. And after we received some significant grant funding from the Exxon Valdez Oil Spill Trustee Council, we initiated a major renovation that started last fall and will be continuing through this winter. We are planning a grand reopening in May of 2025 to coincide with our 30th anniversary as an organization. For the renovation project, we are planning to convert much of the first floor of our facility to public use areas And we are also expanding the building out to the side. If you can see on the top right image on this slide, there is kind of a line going right down the middle of where it says classroom, and then also kind of bisecting the gathering area. That was the original footprint of the building, and we're expanding the building out to the side to add more space for a cultural arts classroom and workshop, a living culture gallery for temporary exhibits, and a larger gathering area when people enter the museum. We are also moving our collections to the basement and over doubling the size of our collection space, adding a space for sacred objects that would not be available for people to view, and also providing space for hopefully the next couple of decades of collections expansion. If you want to learn more about the renovation, we have a website there. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So one of the main components of our project under this special funding from AIANTA and the Forest Service is the fire gallery. We had a committee of community members that helped guide us as we planned out the new gallery space, because we're completely doing all of our exhibits. We've divided up the new gallery hall into different sections, and the fire gallery is the final section that visitors will see when they exit our exhibits. We have a section right before this about the conquest of Kodiak Island, when it was taken over by Russian fur traders in the late 1700s. The transfer of the control rights of Alaska from Russia to the United States, the boarding school era, and other types of things that really affected our Native community throughout the 1800s and the 20th century. But we didn't want to end on really such a discouraging note, because as you know, many Native communities, we've faced a lot, but we've also overcome a lot. And so our community members that were advising us on our gallery displays, they said, you know, you really need to end your presentation of our community with the cultural revitalization, the fact that no matter what we went through as a Native community, we are still persevering, our culture is being revitalized, and you know, aspects of our culture are still thriving. So under the AIANTA funding, we are outfitting a portion of the larger gallery called the Fire Gallery, and it'll focus on the language revitalization, the revitalization of our arts, and even some of our ceremonies and songs and things like that. Next slide, please. The next section of our project, which is kind of a three-part project, is to create a welcoming mural or banner that'll go on the outside of the new facility. So the large flat wall that's on the right-hand side of the building is where this mural will be located. And we've created, we're not calling it a contest, but it's essentially kind of a competition where we advertised for applicants, and we had applicants submit just existing work that they had already done, because we want to respect artists' time. These were all Native artists from our community, both residing in the archipelago, but also the diaspora of Alutiiq people that live throughout Alaska, the Pacific Northwest, and other parts of the world. Those applicants were reviewed by a committee of Native artists from our community that had not applied. And then 3 finalists were chosen, and they'll be offered a $300 stipend to develop a final proposal for a mural. And then out of those 3 final proposals, we will select a top proposal that will receive a larger stipend and also end up on display on this large outdoor mural. We're going to be getting it fabricated out of a vinyl adhesive material, so that after maybe a year or however long it still looks good, it can be removed, and potentially we can do a future program similar to this, where other Native artists will be able to be featured on the exterior of the facility. One of the reasons we're doing this is because our building doesn't really look like a museum to a lot of people. We have people thinking that it's some sort of office building. And so this will make it very apparent to people who drive by, like, this is a Native museum. Come inside, come see what we have to offer. Next slide, please. The final and third aspect of our project is local and statewide media promotion. In the past, our museum, being a small local organization, we've limited our advertising to more local sources like our local newspaper. We've also done some advertising on Facebook, but nothing super extensive. And so we really wanted to use this opportunity to reach a broader audience so that anyone that's planning to come to Kodiak will say they need to come to see the Alutiiq Museum and see what our local culture is all about. And that is the 3 parts of our project, and we're very excited to keep working on it. And thank you again for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, April. We are going to next have Luke and Powell talk about their project up with the Jamestown Squalum tribe.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us. Our AIANTA funded project is an outdoor signage project called Enhanced Tourism by designing, fabricating, and installing outdoor exhibits, interpreting connections between Squalum cultural traditions, Olympic National Forests, Dungeness watershed. The Dungeness River is one of the main ancestral watersheds of the Squalum people. There's 3 federally recognized Squalum tribes, with the Jamestown Squalum located primarily on the Dungeness River. So this ancestral watershed's a really, really important part of the community since time immemorial to today. The tribe owns a lot of the property along the river, has been really involved in habitat restoration projects along the river, and also providing access and sharing stories and history on the Dungeness and the importance of the Dungeness historically, and also the modern day importance of the Dungeness. One of the main investments the tribe made was buying land at an old park that was owned by the Washington Fish and Wildlife at one point, was owned by the county at one point, and the tribe actually purchased it and partnered with the Dungeness Audubon and essentially started the first kind of interpretive facility. In 2018, 2019, the tribe made a substantial investment in the River Center. And while we were calling it an expansion, that's not quite the right word, because it went from just over 1,000 square feet to about 6,000. And the park sees visitors from all over the country. The Olympic Discovery Trail, which is a popular bicycle and pedestrian trail, intersects the park, and it crosses the Dungeness River. And really, there's as much to learn outside of the river as the River Center as there is inside the River Center. But this project allowed the tribe to tell its stories outside of business hours, essentially. So we thank AIANTA for the support. These next slides just kind of capture the upgraded River Center. It's a beautiful building. If anybody's in the Squim area, it's open to the public. The doors are open to the public, but the park is also open to the public. So if it's outside business hours, you can still go see the river. And pretty soon we're going to have some great interpretive signage that tells a little bit more about the importance of the river to the Squalum people and its role in the regional ecosystem. Next slide. So there's kind of a railroad truss theme to this building. If it's zoomed out a little bit, you'll see in a later slide that the bike ped trail actually is sited on old railroad grade. And this is something that's been really popular in our areas to convert old railroad tracks to bike ped trails. There's a historic truss that goes across the river, and the building in front of you is kind of designed to mirror some of the features of the historic truss. Next slide. Inside the Dungeness River Center, there's a lot to learn. There's all sorts of information on the watershed itself, on the geology of the Olympics, on some of the flora and fauna that you'll find around the Dungeness, from higher up in the subalpine all the way down to kind of the estuary where the Dungeness meets the Salish Sea or Strait of Juan de Fuca. Next slide. And there you can kind of see it mirroring what is supposed to be the Howe Truss, which is a old wooden railroad bridge truss that now supports bicyclists and pedestrians. Next slide. And here's a kid learning some slalom stories within the center, and this is really powerful for tribes to be able to tell their stories the way they want them told. The tribe also made an investment in its library, and in the new library here at our tribal government center, there's an expanded cultural exhibit space. As this was something that the tribal citizens and the tribal community asked for, tangible opportunities to learn about the long-term history of the area. Our cultural exhibit space at the library opened in February. It's been really popular, both with the tribal community. The library is also open to the general public. So folks have an opportunity to come in and really learn about the tribe from the tribe's own voice, from the tribe's own stories, from the tribe deciding what content to share, what content not to share. And the project at the River Center echoed kind of some of the same requests that now the general public who's going to be visiting this park after work or in the evening, they'll have the same opportunity to hear from the tribe's perspective about the importance of the Dungeness River. Next slide. This is the kind of the tribe's main emblem, just the outdoor patio area at the River Center. Next slide. And here is the Dungeness River in all of its glory. The tribe, if you look kind of on the left side of the photo, just to the east of the wooden truss, that's a recently expanded floodplain. The tribe, like I said earlier, has been really active in doing habitat restoration projects. And this is the latest habitat restoration project the tribe completed, was right outside the center. Expanding the floodplain, slowing the river down, provides areas for salmon to lay their eggs, to successfully spawn. And it slows the river down overall, where the Dungeness was constrained over the past century or so by a series of dikes and levees that kind of channelize and shotgun the river. When the river's moving really fast, first, if it's going to flood, it floods worse. And second, it'll wash the salmon eggs out of their redds and makes it harder for the salmon to successfully reproduce. But what's really cool is having an interpretive center and then a successful restoration project right outside turns our center into kind of an outdoor classroom or living laboratory that can kind of showcase, because the tribe's done work all up and down the Dungeness. It's not always that accessible, but now there is a successful habitat restoration project right outside its doors that we're able to share and educate the community on, not just the importance of the Dungeness, but the importance of the salmon in the river, the importance of floodplain, the habitat that the estuary and the delta provides. So it just was a project that we wanted to do prior to requesting the funding from AIANTA, but then the guidelines on the AIANTA funding aligned perfectly with this project that had been kind of a long time in the making. Next slide. And there's a few signs at the New River Center, but there's not a lot, and there's not necessarily a slalom voice to all of them. Here's a rain garden sign that was kind of a community project. Rain gardens are cool. They're a great way to deal with stormwater runoff. They look nice and it fits within the River Center. But this isn't really a sign talking about the long-term significance of this watershed or the plants or the animals that are found within the watershed, and it doesn't have much of a slalom voice. So sometimes visitors who come after hours wouldn't necessarily understand the connection between the Jamestown Slalom and the Dungeness River Center. So our AIANTA funded project reinforced that connection and brought a tribal voice to to what's a really, really important river to this whole community. Next slide. So here's kind of an overview. I just wanted to share those slides to hopefully motivate some folks to come visit the River Center, because we're really proud of it, and we're going to be happy once we have this AIANTA funded project completed. It's just going to make it even better. But the recently expanded River Center is a world-class interpretive facility with a mission to inspire understanding, respect, and stewardship of our natural and cultural resources. And the River Center offers a variety of educational programs and presentations for all ages. That's when the center's open. So next slide. This investment is going to benefit the community outside of the River Center's regular hours. As I was saying earlier, there's just little to share if the center itself's not open, aside from a really, really great trail and views of the river. And you can always see birds and animals and flowers and trees down there. But the outdoor exhibits will complement what you see and provide an interpretive element to the existing educational programs that happen inside the center. So we're just really excited to expand this investment in education beyond what's currently being offered. And next slide. So like I said, we already had thought up this plan. I manage a lot of grants for the tribes, and I like to emphasize that it's best to come up with a project that's meaningful to your community, a project that you would want to do whether or not there's a funding opportunity. Develop that project and refine it. And if you do have a meaningful project and it aligns with like an RFP like AIANTA's, these agencies are really excited to fund projects that are well developed and align with their goals. Sometimes folks see an opportunity and try to come up with the project before the deadline, and that's not always the best approach. But sometimes being opportunistic does work out. So our approach to this project just highlighted that it already existed. We identified this need within the community, supported by the tribal citizens, tribal staff, tribal council, and then we came up with ideas to kind of make it a reality. And essentially, I think AIANTA saw how meaningful of a project this was, and they were excited to fund it. So develop your project first based on the needs within your community, and grant funds come fairly easy. Not sure that they'll flow like the Dungeness River, but they will arrive, and good projects usually get the support they deserve. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Powell here. Powell, he just came to work for the tribal government after over a decade as the director of the Dungeness River Nature Center, and he was very involved in the project. So take it away, Powell.
So I was the director there at the center. It's fun to see a bunch of pictures of my old work. Like Luke said, this project was really foreseen before we got the grant funded. So when we redid the River Center, up to that point, the park and the River Center had been a bunch of small projects pieced together to make the educational message out in the park and the center. But when we redid the center, we recognized that the park signs would have to be redone and be unified with the message inside the center. So when we went and did the RFP, we got a local artist, was eventually who we awarded it to. His name is Larry Eifert. Eifert was selected about out of 6 or 7 artists. He has done work for Olympic National Park, Mount Rainier National Park, Glacier National Park. So he's a very storied artist, I'll put it that way. So next slide. So when we went through the process, we met with our tribal cultural department. Is actually the first place we went. We said, what stories are important to you for us to tell about this landscape that's out in our park? And they came back and gave us a bunch of ideas, at which point we went and did the artist first. This is basically a mock-up sketch that ended up changing a lot along the way. So you first get this kind of black and white, the words are not totally done, and then you kind of move through this process. one thing that we learned along the way is that sometimes new departments pop up in the organizations that you work in. So when we were awarded this grant, there actually was not a cultural department at the Jamestown Tribe, like a unified one under its own umbrella. And that came to be while this project was happening, which was awesome because it allowed us to go to them and really confer with them, but it also slowed it up a little bit. It was kind of an unintended benefit that took a little bit more time. Next slide, please. So a couple of the stories that we came out with, one of them was about restoring a prairie, which is the one that you just saw. So we wanted to tell some of the stories about, how do you care for a prairie? So how were they cared for in the past? And then what are we going to do to restore prairies in the future? This one went through quite a bit back and forth because one, the prairie's not totally done in the park, but also what was appropriate to show now and what we should show about the past. So one thing that we came up against just a little talk about was wolves were a really important part, but we don't have wolves anymore. So answering some of those questions through the departments or the people that you're trying to interpret would be a good first step. Okay, next slide. So this is another slide. This is just plants or food and medicine for all. So a big thing that we do in our exhibits is we talk about the ABCs of ecology. So that's the abiotic factors, so geology, weather, climate, all that. The biology, so the bees, the biological factors, so birds, plants, animals, and then the cultural factors. So what relationship did the tribe have? So in these ones, we have lots of birds that are interacting with plants that the tribe also use. But then if you look in the lower part of the picture, you'll see the spotted towhee. We also did like Salish art, basically shadows on some of the creatures that you'll see going through to then link it back to our exhibits inside. So next slide. So that's the one that I just talked about. So this is basically the idea of, hey, there's this relationship, creates a cultural landscape between people and the outside world. So you can go to the next one. So this is our fish one. So this is, you're seeing about 4 of the 10 signs we're doing. So this is, again, fish are always here. So we get these questions within inside the center that we're trying to answer when we're not open. One of the most common questions we get is, are there fish in the river? Which our answer is, there's always fish in the river. They're just not big salmon. So taking commonly asked questions out into a park and then answering them with this AIANTA funding. Next slide. And then your signs start to progress. So on this one, you're going to see it progress. So we went through the black and white stage. Then you go through a coloring where you're starting to work on words. Next slide. And then you kind of come out. So this was the very first slide I showed, or maybe the second. This is coming along to where the coloring's going in, all the wording's going in. You're starting to get that final look. We also work with community partners. So we worked with bird experts and then make sure that we're showing all the right birds and plant experts. So we're working with all sorts of different types of communities to make sure that we're getting the message right. Next slide. And this is what they're mounted on. Just having this idea before you go out and make signs, how you're going to mount them is pretty important. So having meetings about this type of stuff. Next slide. And these are the general locations. So right there where that yellow box includes the center that Luke showed on his slides. Next slide. So this is just basically talking about expect the unexpected and talking about after being awarded, we created a culture department and that definitely helped the project overall. It made it way better, but it was something unexpected that basically extended the timeline a bit. But overall, it's such a positive thing for it to happen during our project to make sure that we got everything right. So awesome. Okay, next slide. And then just the most important thing to say here is AIANTA really made a project that we already had in mind come to fruition. And it's amazing that they were there to support this project, because it really is the cap on top of the whole thing. You know, we created a new beautiful nature center. We did this restoration project. Now to have these signs is like the cap piece to really pull it all together is really awesome. It makes it a beautiful full project instead of feeling piecemeal like it was before. So thank you.
Thank you so much to our guests today. It's really great to see, you know, how you're coming along with your projects, and amazing, Luke and Powell on the culture committee that came along with it in the end. And I love what Luke said about coming up with a meaningful project to your tribe, and then looking for the funding for that. And we're so honored to be able to work with the U.S. Forest Service with this funding to be able to just really, you know, elevate and enhance all of the wonderful work that you're doing in your communities. So thank you for sharing today. So this is the part where you all get to ask some questions. I know there's some questions in the question and answers. We have about 5 minutes before the hour, and I know that some of you may have to go, but those of you that want to stay on, please do, and we'll try to get through these questions. So it looks like there were a few answered. Is there a match? And Toby, you want to reiterate on the match requirement?
Sure, there is zero match for our tribal partners with these funds. And incidentally, also, if you're working with the Forest Service on any other projects, we have the right to do a complete waiver match for other projects as well. So if you don't end up applying for this particular grant, or you are involved with Forest Service on other projects, you can request a reduction or a waiver of the match.
Okay, and then Nolan asks or states that their indirect cost rate is 26.4%. And for the purpose of this grant, I believe we have it at 15%. Is that correct, Toby?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, and then Rudy's asking, are 501c3 entities eligible to apply?
Yes, if the 501c3 is a tribal nonprofit, then yes, you are eligible. And remember, part of the requirements is that the tribal government or the tribal council provides a letter of support that they support the project. So even if you are not specifically affiliated with the tribe, you will need a letter of support from the tribe that is being represented in your proposal.
And then Brenna asks, what is the total amount of funding being allocated this round? I heard the ask amount is 25,000 to 250,000, but I'm curious as to the overall amount being distributed.
This year for this round, we have a hair over 1.2 million to distribute.
And then Angelica asks, does our tribe need to be an AIANTA member to apply for this funding? And that is a no, Angelica. We would love for you to become AIANTA members, but it's not a requirement to apply for this funding. And then Willow asks, is this opportunity available only to federally recognized tribes? I'll let you answer that, Toby.
You know, I don't know the exact answer. All I know is that if your tribe fits the definition as it is written in the Determination Act, then you are allowed to apply. You're eligible for the funds.
Oh, Rowena, what role does the Forest Service play in these projects and should play in tribal projects?
Hi, Rowena. Thank you for joining the call. You know, we get at that through the mandatory letter from the Forest Service. These funds are congressionally allocated directly to the Forest Service, and then in our partnership with AIANTA, we pass them along. But the reason that Forest Service receives these funds is because so much of the land that we manage is tribal land. And also, we are the #1 provider of recreation in the United States. And so what the letter does is it shows the reviewers that there is a relationship there and that the Forest Service will provide technical assistance and support to the project as well. So really what we're saying here is we want our tribal partners to work on these projects with the support of the Forest Service. And so again, we get at that through the letter. And of course, it's going to vary from project to project what the level of support is, but that's what we want to see in the letter is, is the Forest Service involved? Are you all working together to make sure that you have the most technical expertise possible, kind of working together on this project?
Great. And Sarah, morning, Sarah. Did you all find any resistance with the non-native communities surrounding these projects? And if so, how did you get past that? So that'd be for April, Luke, and Powell.
I'll take a shot at it first. I would say no, we didn't have any resistance in our particular project that I know of, and Luke might have a different perspective, but in our community, the tribe is really treasured and does a lot of things past parks and exhibit signs. They provide healthcare and dental facilities and building facilities, and is so much a part of our community that I think more than anything, the signs raise questions as they're being installed. So we put the concrete in and it raises questions that are almost all positive. So from our end, at least what I experienced, no, we did not hit any kind of things from our community.
April, do you have any input on that?
We also did not have any sort of concerns raised by our community. So I guess we're fortunate in that, and I don't have any real guidance to provide.
And then Brenna is asking, can the funding be utilized on or off of Forest Service land?
Yes, that's correct. And that's part of the reason why this partnership with AIANTA is so valuable. The National Forest System does not have granting authority. And so working with AIANTA allows us to sort of have more flexibility about where the funds can be used, and also that we can give those funds directly to the tribe to have tribally driven projects rather than just Forest Service managing the work.
And then Bill says, is there a database or warehouse where past approved proposals are listed that we can see to get ideas on potential projects?
Sherry, you guys have them listed on your website, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So you can find those on the AIANTA website for FY 22 and 23.
Let's see. Angelica says, are there unallowable costs or activities for this funding?
I mean, I'm there's not like I'm not quite sure what this question is getting at, but basically the proposals are scored on their strength. And so, I don't know exactly what kind of activity you're talking about, but I would imagine that if there's something that seems undesirable, it would get a lower score. But without really knowing the specifics, you can propose anything you want. The proof will be, in the review and how the reviewers score the proposals.
Can the funds be utilized for the planning phase of a project?
Yes, I would say so. You can certainly submit a proposal that's just for the planning phase.
Let's see. Rudy says, does your website have any of the grant proposals of past awarded projects? That was answered previously, and that's a yes. Todd says, I wasn't able to join in until a few minutes ago. Could you provide a link to the application information? Yeah, that's also on our website. So Sherry, can you put that in the chat for everybody, please?
Sherry, the chat is enabled. I'm sorry. We had, with the changes to Zoom, it didn't load, so I can put it in the Q&A.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Sarah says, thank you. You're very welcome.
And also
Angel-
this whole webinar is being recorded, so you'll get a chance. That'll also be on the AIANTA webpage, so you can go back and watch it afterwards.
And then back to Angelica, she was the one asking about unallowable costs or activities. And she said, as an example, costs for designs for a tourism center. Is that allowable?
Yeah, again, I wouldn't say that there's anything that's not allowable in the proposal. It's just a matter of, how strong the proposal is.
And that was the same question that Rudy had about funding for design.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously within the scope of having to do with cultural tourism, interpretation, and recreation. So anything outside of that scope, you could of course submit a proposal, but it probably wouldn't score very well because those are the kinds of projects we're looking for. But outside of that, we're open to, review whatever you all are interested in proposing.
Okay.
Sherry, why don't we mention the timeline? You all are also welcome to submit questions after this webinar. So do we have the dates for when those questions need to be submitted and when the answers will be posted on the website? I can dig them up too. Let me see if I can find them.
Yeah, it's hard for me with this double screen going.
I got you. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on.
Okay.
Right back.
Yeah, there is a time period where we are allowing questions to be asked of the committee. So Toby's looking up those deadlines. Oh, here it is.
I popped it in the chat.
Oh, I see it. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
So written questions regarding the RFB due to IANTA on 6/25. So you have a couple weeks to look through this information, and you could, as Toby said, review this webinar again and submit your written questions by 6/25, and then we will respond in writing by July 10th to you. And then the deadline to submit the proposals to IANTA is July 26th. Okay, so written questions by 6/25. I'm not seeing any other questions at this time. Oh, Elroy Kitso raised. Elroy, go ahead.
Hello, thank you for your presentation and everything. I just, as a former, I'm a tribal relations specialist for the Carson National Forest and former tribal employee, and I see the deadline for the application within a month, a little over a month, and it's just really challenging, I know, for a lot of tribes to get all the documentation required when it comes to resolution and other things in that manner within a month. So I always try and, as a relationship specialist, try and advocate to try and stretch the notifications out for tribes for these opportunities. There's really great opportunities. Just have a comment in the sense, hopefully in the future in that manner, just so you get more applicants, because that's a quick turnaround. And I think just as the question, some funding opportunities aren't allowed, like administrative costs and other things in that manner. And that may be one of the questions that they had with regards to what allowable and what's not allowable, you know, so that, I think that may be the question there. But thank you again. Have a great day.
Thank you, Elroy.
All right. You make a great point, and we did actually, in mid-May, we had a meeting in the Forest Service with all of the regional tribal liaisons to let them know about this opportunity ahead of time, so that they could get the word out to the tribal partners. And you're right. I mean, it is kind of a quick turnaround. It's a 2-month RFP, basically. It's 8 weeks. And so I agree with you. We did try to get the word out as quick as possible. We're also sometimes, at the mercy of when we get our budgets. And so we really didn't know, what was going to happen until the end of March. So we did try to turn it around quickly, but I understand what you're saying. I acknowledge that sometimes it can be hard to turn those around, but hopefully we'll continue to get funds year over year. So if somebody is not able to submit a proposal for this year's round of funding, maybe it's a good opportunity to get started and have your proposal ready to go. Fingers crossed that we will also get congressional allocations in FY25. But thank you for that. Appreciate what you're saying.
Yes, thanks, Elroy. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap this up. It's about 11 after the hour. I just want to thank our guests and thank you for joining us today. If you're not a member of AIANTA and would like to be, please visit us at www.ianta.org/membership. Registration is open on our website for our 26th anniversary of our American Indigenous Tourism Conference that will be hosted by the Tunica Biloxi tribe at the Paragon Casino Resort, October 28th through the 31st. Register before June 30th for a chance to win an overnight stay during the conference. So you have just a few weeks to do that. And again, please visit our website at AIANTA.org to learn more about our education program offerings and to access this recording. Thank you again and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Powell. All right, I think I stopped the, oh no, I didn't.